Izzo said he saw it coming, even though Michigan State escaped with the last-second victory, 71-69 over Minnesota on Wednesday, thanks to Joey Hauser's game winner with literally almost no time left on the clock. Izzo was not pleased, so we need to play better defense. Otherwise, someone is going to beat us, maybe even at our place. Oh, Tom sounded so smart, because on Saturday, Northwestern goes to the number 10 team in the country and hands Michigan State its first loss at home against the Wildcats since January of 2009. The nation was shocked, could not believe the result. Izzo, he kind of told you it was coming.
This is no surprise. We've been living on borrowed time. There's no surprise to this. We're playing very well until we started to think we're an offensive team. I had to remind Christie and Gabe Brown that defense still wins championships and wins big games and wins all games. We got a good team. We got good guys. But I think they're reading their press clippings and thinking they're better than they are and thinking they're going to reinvent the way to win. And my staff and I did not do a very good job of making sure that didn't happen.
Welcome back to Big Ten basketball and beyond. Mike DeCourcy, Rick Pizzo, Raphael Davis. Mike, you and I have covered Tom Izzo for a long time. Raphael, you played on Purdue teams against Izzo's Michigan State teams. These comments do not surprise any of us. I mean, it's Tom talking to his team through the media without question. But you could absolutely argue that he was right. He saw this coming against Minnesota. His team was not playing the kind of basketball it had played during the beginning of that long winning streak. And then it came to an ugly head on Saturday against Northwestern.
You've got to play the game the right way. Every time you step on the floor, no matter who you're playing, no matter where they're ranked or their previous 4 or 5 games, play the game the right way. Tom Izzo wants Michigan State to play Michigan State-branded basketball. Be tough, be physical, rebound the basketball to allow you to get in transition. But at the end of the day, high basketball IQ and toughness is what Michigan State is about, and that's what they did not get against Northwestern.
You could also argue that he was wrong because they only gave up 64 points. Northwestern shot under 35% from the field and under 31% from three. But why is he right? Because he knows what he wants to see from his team, and it's not just about numbers and analytics and all that kind of thing. And speaking of analytics, under a point per possession as well for the Northwestern Wildcats. But it's about toughness in the moment. It's about closing out games when you're at home, and you should have the confidence with the fans behind you. And none of that was evident, really, even in the win over Minnesota. So it's not so much about whether they're playing well enough on defense. It's whether they're playing tough enough overall. I think that's really what he equates toughness with defense, and so that's why he goes there first.
I mean, you would never call out Tom for being wrong about any kind of post-game comments unless you had the stats to back it up, because you're right, defensively they played okay. This is just him telling his team, don't listen to everybody out there saying that we're a Final Four team. It is January. These bumps in the road are going to happen. Izzo's been there. He knows that a team doesn't just need to play physically well. It needs to mentally be there every night. He felt like they weren't there on Saturday.
Yeah, it's also about toughness on offense. I mean, you have to play through possessions. You have to fight to get good shots. And that wasn't happening at all against the Wildcats. Even with Pete Nant's absence, their best shot blocker, they were not able to get to the shots they needed to get. They were very stagnant, especially down the stretch when the game was on the line. So toughness is a quality that goes all the way through the Michigan State program and goes all the way through the game, and it wasn't evident.
And you think about how you win at Michigan State. You hit the glass, you keep them out of transition, and you make the easy ones. Ryan Young played harder than everybody on that court. 5 offensive rebounds. That's not what Coach Izzo wants to see. 17 turnovers. That's not Michigan State branded basketball when you look at the history of Tom Izzo. So those things are going to have to get shored up.
So while Michigan State suffers its first conference loss of the year, that means only one Big Ten unbeaten remains, and that team is the Fighting Illini, outscoring opponents by almost 24 per game during their current 6-game win streak. It's kind of the exact opposite of Michigan State, who's played 3 of its last 4 by 6 points or less, one way or the other. Kofi Coburn's been terrific, but the star here as of late has been Trent Frazier. Mike, late in games, especially against Nebraska when Kofi did not have a very good night, and against Michigan most recently, it wasn't Coburn, it wasn't Alfonso Plummer shooting threes. It was Trent Frazier basically taking this team and putting it on his back.
The funny thing is, if you look at Trent Frazier's career statistics, he's the same player almost every year that he's been there, and he's been there a while. But this is different. This is even whatever the numbers say. Trent Frazier, now that he has the responsibility with Andre Curbelo out injured, now that he has the responsibility to run the offense, he has to be big in big moments. And my goodness, is he doing that? The way he played down the stretch against Nebraska, the left-handed drives he got straight to his left hand against Michigan, the deep three when they ran great action to get him popped open. He just makes big shots, and he controls the game down the stretch. And this has not been his responsibility for a lot of his career. He's mostly played off the ball. He's had moments where he's had to do this, but mostly played off the ball. Now it's full-time, and he's doing a fabulous job.
And I think he understands time and score very well. He understands his teammates. I mean, he's playing a lot of open gym with his guys. He knows when they get going. He knows who to put in good positions. And you look at that Michigan game in the second half, 16 points, 3 assists, 0 turnovers, but he also goes 6 for 6 from the free throw line. This is what you want your super senior to do. Take a game over and win the game. Just had the will in the fight, and then he does it on the defensive end. He will guard your best player 94 feet. He'll be tenacious. He just brings a lot to this Illinois offense and defense, and the leadership he shows has been big down the last 2 games.
Down the stretch against Michigan, Illinois was struggling shooting the ball in the second half. They made 7 of their last 8 field goals. Of those 7 made field goals, Frazier scored or assisted on 6 of those 7. And yes, Kofi was involved. Other guys, Grandison, get involved. But right now, Trent Frazier is driving this Illini bus. Rick Pizzo back with Mike DeCourcy, and not just Raphael Davis, but 2015 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Raphael Davis. And that's extremely important right now because we asked Raphael to put together a list of his top defenders at this point in the season. And right now you see the 5 candidates: Jamari Wheeler, Trace Jackson Davis, Caleb McConnell, Johnny Davis, and Marcus Bingham. Obviously, all these guys do their defensive work in different ways, but they all do it well. And Raphael, I know that you absolutely love Jamari Wheeler, who in the early part of his career did it with Penn State and now does it with Ohio State.
Yeah, defense travels. Jamari Wheeler is very aggressive on the ball. Off the ball, he comes and gets steals. He's always aware. He's alert. I mean, you saw him guarding Jalen Pickett. When the shot clock goes down, he knows what's going on, goes to challenge. And just in transition, he allows nothing easy. He's a guy that will give up a foul to stop a basket. He's an on-ball hawk. If you play with the ball in front of Jamari Wheeler, he's normally going to take it. And then when he digs in the post so aggressive with his quick hands, he gets a lot of steals from big men who try to over-dribble.
4th in the Big Ten in steals this year. Added a little bit of offense to his game this year, maybe a little bit more than he had at Penn State. Speaking of a guy who has offense, but also does it on the defensive end, Indiana's Trace Jackson Davis.
Trace is a different defensive player than he was when he was playing for his prior coach, Archie Miller. When Mike Woodson came in, he wanted him to be more aggressive against the basketball. He wanted him to challenge shooters more, and he's more than doubled his shot blocks per game to now leading the league. He's showing his ability to move laterally. That's really going to be important for him when he moves to the next level, but it also helps the Hoosiers be a force at the defensive end. And, of course, he can turn a basket, he can turn an opportunity into points as well as anybody in the country.
Big Ten's leading shot blocker to date. One guy who I don't think gets talked about enough, Raphael, for his defensive acumen is Caleb McConnell at Rutgers.
Yeah, Caleb McConnell is a dog on the ball, and then off the ball, he plays so well. He plays a passing lane. He can bottle you up. He's a big reason why Rutgers were able to beat Purdue. Took Sasha Stefanovic out of the game, didn't allow him to come off cuts. He plays gritty and tough. He gets on the floor. And like Jamari Wheeler, if you play with the ball, he's going to take it. But his ability to bottle you up off the ball and come hard on blow-up screens separates him from the other defenders.
Long, he's got that length, got that speed, that reach, forces a lot of uncomfortable play for opposing offensive players. Same thing can be said for Johnny Davis. We know him for his scoring. He has lit up Big Ten scoreboards this year and stat sheets, but man, he's really good on the other end too.
But one of the reasons he's really good on defense, he doesn't have to guard himself. That helps, right? But he has the length you talked about before. He reads the passing lanes like he's an all-pro cornerback. Greg Gard talked about him and said the number one trait that Johnny has is competitiveness. And competitiveness is something that's really an essential ingredient on defense. You have to want to guard, especially when you're out there throwing in 25, 30 a game. You don't really have to guard in that circumstance. But I will say Matt Painter, the coach at Purdue, who's known for defense, known for defensive teams, he called Johnny Davis the perfect definition of a two-way player. I don't think you can get a better compliment than that.
That's awfully nice coming from a guy that knows a thing or two about two-way players. Last but not least, he probably still needs another sandwich and a glass of milk. Marcus Bingham, not the most physical guy down low, but his length and his shot blocking ability makes him a tough guy to deal with.
He anchors the Michigan State defense in just 20 minutes per game. He's able to affect shots all over the court. You look at Michigan State's defense, they're top 5 in points allowed, field goal percentage allowed, and also three-point percentage allowed. He gives them a force at the rim, allows Tyson Walker, A.J. Hogarth to really press up on the ball, and then he can switch. He can guard all 5 positions and move his feet. He's a very active defender. His 7-foot wingspan really helps him out, and he's not afraid to get dunked on, so he can test every shot at the rim.
Is that a good thing when you're not afraid to get dunked on?
It's a great thing where you're not afraid to go out there and get dunked on. You're playing hard. You're going at the rim. Sometimes you get dunked on, but sometimes you get a game-winning block.
That's why Bingham is first in defensive rating overall inside the Big Ten. Woodson doing good work so far, 12-4 overall. IU, one of 2 Big Ten teams still undefeated at home this year. Ben Johnson, Micah Shrewsbury, along with Woodson, first-year permanent head coaches this year. Danny Manning, of course, at Maryland right now on the interim basis, having taken over after Mark Turgeon decided to leave College Park. Woodson's been terrific. You could say the same thing about Ben Johnson and the start that Minnesota got off to. Now, they've hit a little bit of a rough patch right now, but even the comeback against Iowa when they were down 23, made it a 3-point game, you can tell the team believes in what he is trying to sell them.
Yeah, no matter what happens the rest of the year, Minnesota's already way ahead of what people expected. I spent 18 years in Cincinnati, living in Cincinnati. I made a lot of friends in the Xavier program. He was only there for 3 years, and he made a ton, because when I spoke to some people at Xavier, the first thing they asked me is, how's Ben Johnson doing? What do you think? What's he going to be? They really like him. They think he's a bright guy. He did great work for them. They have great hopes, and obviously it's reflected in how the team is performing and what the records has been, as well as how they fought back this afternoon.
Yeah, they fight. They're tough. Coach Johnson tells his team all the time, you could bend, but don't break. And that's exactly what they showed at Michigan State. It's what they showed here against Iowa. You may get down, but don't give up the fight. They're fighting the fight for Coach Johnson, and it speaks to the players wanting to play hard for their coach.
Same thing happening at Penn State with a guy you know very well, and Micah Shrewsbury, former Purdue assistant. Penn State didn't get the job done against Ohio State, but much like Minnesota, I think they've exceeded some expectations. Shrewsbury did not inherit a roster deep with a ton of talent. They've scared a lot of teams. They already have 3 Big Ten wins.
Yeah, and seeing Coach Shrews with his guys for a shoot-around, you can tell the guys absolutely love Coach Shrews, an offensive coach who's really turned this Penn State team into a defensive juggernaut. They're out there playing hard. They're defending. His ability to coach you tough but show you he loves you is very, very high. I mean, the community, they've really embraced him. I mean, I hadn't been to a Penn State game like with the crowd as alive and as alert as they were against Rutgers a couple weeks ago. So you could tell the city is embracing what Coach Shrews is wanting to do. I mean, Seth Lundy, Jalen Pickett, John Hare, they're all buying into it. You got guys going up to the weight room after games. So when you have that type of coach that you want to put in that type of work for, just go all the way, run through a wall for him.
He has a great resume, but it wasn't just that got him hired. I thought the Penn State administration did a really good job of researching what he's about as a coach. He does connect with his players on a very intimate level, and I think that will be reflected as we go forward in the recruiting process as well. We'll see Penn State start to get deeper and more gifted and really carry forward into, what is probably over the last 3-4 years the best conference in college basketball. So it takes a big step to be able to compete in that league. I think Mike is going to get that done.
And time for us to look ahead to monster weeks for teams inside the Big Ten, weeks that could be defining not just for records, but perhaps for future potential, Big Ten tournament seeding and beyond. We start with Raphael's alma mater, Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue has a big week going to Illinois, going to Indiana. It'd be a great game to see where their defense lies against Illinois. You know Purdue has struggled to guard perimeters this entire season. Having to guard a Trent Frazier, having to guard a Alfonso Plummer, those guys, you're going to have to lock into a scouting report. But, I mean, it's going to come down to putting the ball in the basket. Purdue's been doing a good job at that this season. But if you don't get stops on the road, when your jumper doesn't travel with you, it's tough for you.
If the combination of Zach Edey and Travion Williams is able to be effective against Kofi Coburn, they sometimes can use that physicality. Not that Kofi can't stand up to it, but being able to send the length and the physicality together and not be able to, for Kofi to have to play the 30-plus or so and those guys be able to alternate, that might help. And then maybe the perimeter is weakened a little bit because their interior presence is diminished.
Those road games on Monday, Thursday, and then Purdue actually has a third game this week back at home on Sunday against Northwestern. Wisconsin plays just twice this week, and they actually have a back-to-back against two teams that met against each other on Saturday, that being Northwestern and Minnesota. At Northwestern on Tuesday, at home, I should say Michigan State, not Minnesota, at home against Michigan State on Friday.
Yeah, I think the Badgers, when you look at it, what's really worked for them of late is the extra defensive attention that's being paid to Johnny Davis. And why wouldn't you? He's just tremendous. But we saw Tyler Wall step up in their win a week ago against Maryland. We saw Brad Davison step up and have a great game for the first time in a few games from the perimeter. Those two guys, when they're able to fill in the gaps, when Johnny Davis is having a little bit of an off day shooting, perhaps because of the defensive attention, that's really what's elevated the Badgers to being one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, if you would have told me before the Ohio State game Johnny Davis would go 4 for 18, I would tell you Ohio State wins by 20. But Tyler Wall comes in that game, 8 for 12, gets you 20 points. Brad Davison was big time. I think they found a way to win when Johnny Davis struggles, and that's what everybody was asking. Who is this team without Johnny Davis? Tyler Wall's been playing great. Brad Davis has stepped up what a senior does.
And finally, Michigan's been a rough go for the Wolverines as of late. They have Maryland and Indiana this week. The Indiana game is on the road. Need to see some life from the Wolverines, something to believe that there is something to play for the rest of this year.
Just play hard. Play extremely hard. Don't play through your jumper. Get the ball, play within the paint, play through your best player, Hunter Dickinson, but just play the game the right way, and you'll get a good result.
Play big as well. I mean, Hunter Dickinson was unavailable for that loss to Illinois on Friday night, mostly because he hadn't practiced. So we still don't know officially whether he'll be back for that game, but his return is enormous for the Wolverines. If they don't have him, it's really a struggle for them to be a highly competitive team in this conference.
They didn't just miss Dickinson that night. They missed Brandon Johns Jr. as well. And when you look ahead to going against Trace Jackson Davis, you probably want to have some big guys that can log some minutes because you know TJD is going to log his and you know he's going to get his.